So being completely honest, I don't remember much before everything kind of went down. All I do remember is that there's one car specifically that I remember pulling into school, and that's because I thought it looked nice. It was a white car with white rims, and then kind of everything from there forward was a blur. But I do remember clearly walking, because I had left my classroom to go drop a note off at the office, and as soon as I walked around the corner, I clearly remember hearing the gunshot behind me. And I didn't really think much about it because I would never think that something like that would happen here. I thought maybe someone just pulled a prank and tipped one of the vending machines over or something like that. But when I saw the administrators running, I was kind of like, whoa, this is real. Like, it never would happen at Forrest. And if it did, like, maybe I'm just in a dream or something. And when I saw them running, I just kind of turned around and started walking behind them just to see what happened. And when I walked around the corner, I saw the gun on the floor and a hole in the door, and everyone was kind of just panicking and running around screaming, and it was crazy. And I just got back to my class, and when I walked into my class, everyone was in the teacher had put everyone in the pod like we were supposed to, and mostly all the girls were crying and all the guys were barricading the doors to make sure nobody could get in. Thank God that I could get in. And then the SWAT team came in, and because we were the classroom right across from where the gunshot happened, everyone had to get checked, so everyone got patted down by SWAT, and that was pretty intimidating. After everyone got checked, we were told to get in single file line, hands on each other's shoulders, and walk out of the school. And we were the last classroom in that hallway to get cleared, so we were the last ones out. And that was kind of surreal, seeing that there was no one in school except for us at that time, at least in our hallway, and that's all that we could really see. And then when we got out, it was kind of hectic outside. Everyone was crying, looking for their friends, looking for their brothers and sisters, and just making sure that everyone was okay. All the administrators were awesome. Joe Lacagnato was there. He's a good friend of my family. He was there. He's the fire chaplain, so he was there helping people who were crying and just needed some emotional support. Then I got called over for an interview because I was a witness. I was there. And I just talked to a detective and told him everything that I saw, which is basically everything I just said. And then I went over to the bus as soon as I could just to find my friends, and I found, a few of them from the soccer team that really meant a lot to me and made sure they were okay. And then we got bused to First Baptist, and even there, people were still super emotional. I mean, everyone's emotions react differently, so some people were okay with it, some people were taking it really tough, and I found my girlfriend and we just talked about it because she was on the other side of school. She had really no idea what happened until a SWAT came into her room, and like obviously I knew from as soon as it happened, I knew it happened, and then we left, and that was really it. Besides, the hecticness and just the shock and awe of like, wow, this actually happened to Forrest, and it was a truly wild day.
That morning I didn't have my review. Normally that week I'd been coming at 6:45 doing reviews, but that morning we had a staff meeting, so I wasn't here that early. So my day started off at about 7:45. Came into second period. We had started to hand out the AP government exams because we had just taken the final the day before and we were going over them, and the announcement for the code red came through. My students, without even asking, knew what to do. They all moved over to the spot away from the door, away from the window, as we had gone over before. I checked in the hallway to make sure that my door was locked because I wanted to make sure that it was, even though it was. I saw Jaquardis Williams, who's in my cat. I pulled him in. I said, "Quad, get in here." And then we sat. At first we thought it was something like a test, or maybe sometimes for other reasons they want to keep students in class, so they'll announce a code. When we heard the sirens, we realized something was up, and so that's when the students started to really start feeling that maybe this was something a little different. Sitting in here with all of them, not having any information, because that's part of the protocol is to go dead on the cell phones and internet and communications. It was difficult because I knew they were scared, but we were prepared. We knew that we had a plan for things. We'd gone over if this got more serious, because we're supposed to have announcements if there's some sort of active shooter walking around campus. I went over with the kids exactly what we would do as far as putting things against the door and things like that. After about maybe an hour, we started hearing the SWAT teams come through. We could hear their radios. We could see they approached our door, jiggled the handle, and, you know, shouted, "We have kids in here, we have kids in here," and we heard someone else yell, "The hallway's not clear." At that point, it was very, very real and very serious as to what was going on. We could even see the laser sights from the guns that, you know, something was seriously wrong. The students tried to stay calm. Sometimes we tried to tell jokes. The jokes being that the phones kept going off and kept having to silence them. And we actually had 5 students that were in Miss French's room because they were retaking a test that we were going over. So it was a race on how to silence their cell phones. A few minutes after we first had the first group come here, another group came in and they instructed themselves, identified themselves as officers, and said that they would be entering to have everyone's hands up. So I, standing by the door, instructed everyone to get their hands up and ready. As they came through, they searched every cabinet, they searched under the desk, they thoroughly inspected my room to make sure there was no threat inside the room, and then they exited. I remember Mr. Carson was with them, and I vividly remember he wrote "clear" on my door. After that, they left. We were here. We realized we were clear now, but we still weren't sure exactly what had happened. Maybe 20 minutes later, I'm not certain about time, but another officer came to the door and instructed us that we'd be leaving and to leave with our hands up. I was leading my students, and I led them down the hallway with hands over our heads. We walked to the end of the hallway, turned, we went down the stairs. We passed probably 4 or 5 officers with, you know, what appeared to be very, very high-powered rifles, automatic guns. And I remember when we left the building, it was like almost shock to see the amount of support, the amount of cars, the amount of officers, students in the grass. It hit me for a second how real the situation had become, because we've been in Code Reds many times. Like, sitting in your room for 45 minutes, an hour is nothing above normal, but once you head out there and you realize that this was something very serious, it was a little overwhelming. I was very, very happy that the first person I saw, I made direct eye contact with Mrs. Crawford, and so we just kind of made eye contact, nodded our heads, and then we were instructed to speak with a police officer. He asked if we had seen anything, if anyone was hurt. Everyone in my group was fine. We didn't know what was going on, and then instructed us to go over near where the bus would be picking us up. At that point, information was shared. Everyone realized we had 1 shooter, 1 shot, one casualty, but not a fatality. So we were very, very happy and fortunate that only 1 person was injured, and that from all accounts, he was going to be okay.
That morning, the weird thing is, like, I don't even remember anything about that morning. Well, it was just a regular morning. Like, sometimes on the way to school, I'm like, what if this person behind me rear-ends me? Or what if something bad happens and I'm late to school? But this morning, or that morning, it was like just a normal morning. And I remember Mr. Guest wouldn't let Brett into the classroom at first because she was tardy. And then she walked in, and she looked very panicked. And I remember we said the pledge. And then the next thing I remember is, like, the code red being called. And I feel like our classroom was a little bit different from some of them, because, like, I've heard things from people who said that they thought it was a drill or they didn't even know anything was going on until the SWAT team came. But I feel like our whole class knew it was real, and that's kind of, like, the horrible part. You could, like, hear it in the woman's voice that it wasn't a drill, and it was so early and it was straight away. And I just remember Mr. Guest going, "Studio, now." And, like, everyone just looked at him, and I don't even want to know what he was feeling in that moment, because that must have been so much pressure and just a lot of, like, these kids are depending on me to protect them. But then we went into the studio, and I can honestly say that I felt very safe. I wedged myself between 2 bookcases, and I was like, if anything happens, like, I just prayed for peace, and God gave it to me, and I was like, if anything happens, it'll be okay, and it'll be I could hear all my friends crying, and we started to hear sirens, and they all started sobbing when a siren would come by. It would get a little bit heavier. and you could kind of like feel it in the room, and it was like someone was pressing down from the ceiling and going a little bit more down every second. And then every time a siren would come by, I'd go down a little bit more. And then we heard police radios in the hallway, and then it went down a little bit more. And then it was just like weighing on the top of all of our heads because we heard it right outside the room, like the police radio. So we knew that there was a problem. And Mr. Guest tried to be like, oh, it's a police chase, but when we heard the radios in the hallway, we knew that it wasn't that. And it was very scary, but I felt safe because the studio was really dark. There was like, someone would have had to come through multiple doors, and the one door that we did have in the room didn't have a window. Mr. Guest did such a good job of making us feel safe, and I'm so thankful for him that he was the person that was in here with us, because he himself is a survivor of a workplace shooting, and he gave us all a little bit of the courage that he could muster, and I feel like that was really important to all of us. And then when the SWAT team came in, oh gosh, that was scary. That was horrible. When they came in, they just had these shields and guns, and it was just, Mr. Guest said, we're in here, we're in here. We all put our hands up. And I remember my legs and my arms were shaking. I was like, these people are gonna think I'm dancing or something, because I was literally shaking so bad. And they came in, and that's when I started crying. And if you don't know, I'm a total crier, but I like couldn't even process what was happening when it was happening. And when that happened, I just like was like, we're safe. And then when they said that we were okay, was like the biggest relief in the world. And they were like, just stay put. We're gonna go out in the hallway, you guys just stay put. We're gonna go clear the other classrooms. So they went out and cleared us. And I remember Allison was getting phone calls from her mom explaining what had happened. And I'm never gonna forget what her face looked like, because she heard it before the rest of us did. And like, that's just something that you're never gonna forget, like seeing her face when she heard that someone was shot, because we didn't know the details. We didn't know if it was a teacher or a student, what teacher, what student. We didn't know any of that. And she shared it with all of us. So then we felt a little, not better, but at least we knew what was going on. But I'm never gonna forget like the pain that I saw on her face as her mom told her. And then I remember when I saw the buses and I was hugging Brett and I was like, we're safe, we're okay, we're out of there. And like seeing everyone, and like, it was just it was a very weird feeling. And then we got on the bus, and I just remember when we pulled up to the church, there were so many people. And we got off the bus, and I walked into the church, and I started crying, because like being in a church, like in a house of God, meant a lot to me.
We had just started second period, which I have ENC 1102. I have a big class. I have about 31 kids in the class. And we had said the pledge, doors were locked, I was handing out some papers, and of course it happened right next door. So we heard this crash. I'm not that familiar with guns, but it didn't sound like a gun to me. It sounded like a vending machine falling over or something like that. And we heard this blood-curdling scream. So I said to my students, down. And they turned off the lights, and my room connects with the back door to Miss Haddon's room where the shooting took place. And I didn't know what there was going to be when I walked in there, but I saw the young man leaned over the desk. He was screaming, and I just said to her kids, come in, come in, come in. They were puzzled because they knew there wasn't a shooter in the room, but they didn't know why he was hurt. And as I was pulling the last kid in, Miss Haddon said there's a bullet hole in the door, so we knew it was a shooter. I didn't realize till later that the rest of the school didn't necessarily know why they were on code red. But I would say we were fully on code red 90 seconds to 2 minutes before it was called for the rest of the school, so we could hear everything. We heard Officer Long and Mr. Carson run into the room. We heard the shooter in the hall next door. We heard everything. So I had about 55 kids in here. It was perfectly silent. I closed the little windows to my room, and we were pretty terrified. We left, so that happened at about 8:35. We were in the classroom till about 9:30. the first thing I did when we got outside was to look for my 3 or 4 students who are usually a couple minutes late. And it turns out one of the ones that was late was the girl who was trying to get into my classroom and encountered the shooter in the hall. And I did not let her in, but I didn't know she was there. I would have, I think, broken protocol and let her in, because I was at the door bringing in those 25 kids from over there. At the church, you know, and I'm sure everybody feels the same way, I think the people at First Baptist responded graciously. It took a while to get it straight, you know, which door, who's going, what are we doing? But I thought our kids were remarkable. I know some of the parents had to wait, but I thought they were remarkable too. We didn't have people beating down the doors trying to get to their kids. About 2 o'clock, they took us, the teachers, to one of the back rooms at First Baptist, explained very little, but a little bit, gave us a little bit to eat. I think I was back here on campus about 3:30. Mr. Carson asked us to stay for our kids coming back. I stayed till about 5 o'clock, and I think all of my kids had come back. Of course, they're older, they drive, and I left here about 5 o'clock.
So I woke up and I was running late as usual, and then I got to school and I went downstairs to talk to Ms. Grimsley, and so I was even more late. So I went back up the back stairway to go up into D hallway, and I was going to my class and I heard a gunshot. So I ran to my class and started banging on the door and screaming, but like they were all like running and the lights were off, and so nobody, like half of them didn't hear me and then half of them didn't know what to do. So I was just kind of like stranded in the hallway. I was like, I didn't tell my mom I loved her this morning. Like I didn't see my mom. My dad's in Asia. My brother was on crutches and he was in the hallway too because he got there the same time I did. And there's just like a million things running through my mind, but like in the moment I was just so like in shock with fear. Just, I didn't know if I was gonna live in the next minute or not. And I was like scared to turn around, so I just turned to my right and I saw Miss Panasuck and I ran to her, and she just like held me in her arms and was like, it's gonna be okay, it's all right. Like, and little did I know that there was a shooter behind me with a gun. And so he all of a sudden was like a foot away from me and he had thrown his gun down and he was just like, I want to go to jail. I was going to shoot up the school, but I'm not going to anymore. And so then Miss Panasuck grabbed his hands and like pulled him away from me. And when she pulled him away from me, I ran out the back stairway and I ran across Merritt Camp and ran all the way down to by the Circle K. And I called my mom and my mom met me there. And then I had to go back for an interview with the detectives at the school, and then we went and met all the students at the church, and we're just waiting there, and it was just good seeing like all the students coming in and being able to see that they're all alive and they're okay. So.
Seeing my family for the first time was definitely kind of a breathtaking moment. I feel like in America especially, people take their lives for granted so much that they don't realize how uncertain life could be, and I really did witness that at school, because I mean, I feel like that God was with us at our school, or whatever religion you may follow, but I feel like someone was watching over our school that told the kid or had the gun jam, whatever the story was, but he was protecting us, and that it didn't get to as bad as it could have. And whenever I saw my family, I was just so thankful to be able to like hold them again and, you know, hug my mom and have her just like feel her warmth. And as crazy and weird as that sounds, like that's just something that I feel like we take for granted and that we should really just love every day.
It was like very, very just like refreshing. Like every time I like am with my family, I feel safer than I normally do, just because like nothing's ever happened to me when I'm with my family. So when my mom got there, like I just felt relief, and so like I kind of gained my sanity and started checking on people, trying to make sure my brother was okay, because we couldn't get a hold of my brother and he was here. So that was really scary. And then we went and checked my little sister out, and just being able to see her, and I think honestly for her being able to just see us, because she didn't know if her brother and sister were okay. So that was really cool. But then Saturday night, like was the fastest my dad could get home from Asia. So just seeing, like being able to see my dad was like, because my dad's like my best friend, so like him not being there was like hard. And so just like being able to see him was like really, really like, it was just like a weight was lifted off my shoulders. So.
Bailey is my stepdaughter, Miss Crawford's daughter, and she goes to Howard. And once we were on the buses, I checked my email, and I don't even know why, but I checked my email on my cell phone, and it was an email from Mr. Hensel, the principal at Howard, saying that Bailey had heard there was a shooting, and she was upset, and she needed to talk to us as soon as possible, because she knew that everything was okay, but at first she didn't. Later on, I found out that some kids had heard on the bus and just walked into her first period and said, yeah, there's a shooting at Forrest. And so she was like, oh, I need to go talk to someone right now. And they were able to get her to Mr. Hensel, and I was able to call, and they patched me straight through to him. So I was able to talk to her and reassure her that I was fine, that her mother was fine, that, you know, all the students are okay. And so that was good. And then we didn't see her until Sunday night, and it was really, really great to see her. I talked to my boys that night, and I saw them on Monday, and it was great to see them again. Those are your thoughts. You know, school's supposed to be a very safe place. You entrust that when your kids go there that they're going to be taken care of. And something like this, it doesn't just affect the student who was hurt or the student in the classroom. It affects the whole school and affects the whole community. I know that the elementary students made cards for our kids here. They're passed out on Forrest Friday. I had a number of elementary teachers approach me and say it actually helped them, the elementary kids, get through this, because they had brothers and cousins and sisters, or just a camaraderie with other students at school, and being able to make those cards actually helped them deal with some of the issues they had to deal with. So.
Really, how I recovered personally, I just made sure I took time out of my days whenever I, was thinking about it and couldn't get out of my head, because obviously my experience was a little more personal than someone else's experience, so I did take it a little harder. So I would just, if I felt the need to just think about it, I wouldn't try to fight it, I would just let it go. I would just think about it and think about all the things that happened and how fortunate I am that I wasn't there when it happened, and maybe 10 seconds earlier I would have been shot. So I kept thinking about that, and I talked to people. Like I mentioned Joe Lacanata, he was a great help. I talked to him a lot. I talked to my dad and my mom and my girlfriend, and the 5 greatest friends in the world that I have. And that really is how I work through things.
Well, like my mom was like, had the news on when we got home that day from like the church and stuff, and she was like, oh, I can turn it off if you don't want to watch it. And I was like, no, like I want to watch it. And so we were just like, seeing everything on the TV was like, made it even more real. I was like, this is like crazy. And I didn't really obviously I was really emotional when it was going on and like happening, because we like didn't know what was going on. But then it didn't really like officially hit me until like the next morning, like when I woke up. And like when you wake up for like just a second, it's like peaceful and like calm for like that split second. You're like, oh, like it's a new day. And then like all of a sudden I just like remembered it, and I just started like crying, and I was like, I just couldn't stop for like 2 hours. I just couldn't stop crying. And I think that was just like really important to just like, because obviously at some point it hits everyone, but to just like get it out like of your system. I think that was like what helped me, like not like get over it, but get over it more.
Coming back to second period I was very nervous. I remember being afraid like that Monday morning, like not being, if I wasn't going to be able to get out of my car or not, because I could just picture myself just sitting in my car and not being able to get out. And it did happen kind of like that Monday morning, where I pulled into my parking spot and I just started crying, and I was like, I don't want to get out of the car. Like, I don't want to go back in there. But then I saw my friend and I was like, okay, I'm going to get out now. And I thought it was going to be that way Tuesday, but I don't know, I felt like I knew all my friends were going to be really upset coming back to second period. And the night before, a few of my friends were texting in a group chat, and they're like, I don't want to go back into Mr. Guess's room. And then I was like, well, I'll be there, so it's okay. We can all go together. And then coming back to his room was a little weird, but Mr. Guess made us all talk about it. And I feel like that, like I really needed that, and like I really needed to talk about it with my friends. And it was really therapeutic. And then Mr. Guest all made us go into the studio one by one, or in pairs, to like make sure that we were okay in there, and that every time we walked in there we wouldn't remember the bad parts, like the bad things that happened in there, but like the good things that happened in there. And like, I thought when I walked into this, I remember like watching my friends, like the first group of people walk into the studio, I like started crying because I was like, I don't want them to go in there, like I want them to stay where I can see them, because like I remember them like walking in front of me into the studio, and now I'm watching them again walking in there. But then by the time I went in there, I was like, it's okay, like everything's okay, like nobody's in here, nobody could get in here, we're all okay. And like Evan's making a recovery, so that was good.
Okay, so it definitely wasn't me, it was students. Students wanted to do something, I helped focus some of their beliefs, and what I did is I contacted through Remind a number of student leaders that I know in different areas, and I wanted to connect as many as possible. Okay, I was like STN, NHS, Gov Club, sports, it's how can we get all these group leaders, and we started kind of like a group chat on, okay, what do you guys want to do and how can we do this to the best of our abilities? And they said, well, we want to wear green on Monday and blue on Tuesday, and it's like, okay, let's get the community involved and let's make this thing much bigger. And so we decided Forest Friday, along with wearing green on Monday and blue on Tuesday to support forest and first responders. The Forest Friday movement exploded beyond just our school. The district turned the website green. Every school base was encouraged to wear green. Students across the county at every school were wearing green and forest things. We have a number of pictures from schools as far away as Indiana, California, Arizona. There was a group of people in Canada who wore green, so this was literally an international movement. I know that a number of companies, Chick-fil-A, Papa John's, they actually were able to to break their uniform code and wear green that day to work. And the idea was to just show students how much support there really is in this community. Because I don't ever want students to feel that they have to take immensely drastic steps to get help or to be noticed. And that Forrest is a family, and if you need help, we're here for you. And the family extends beyond the classroom, it extends beyond this campus.
I think one of the greatest things that could come out of something so tragic is a lot of like unification, because the ForrestStrong movement, I don't think anybody was expecting it to be so supported by everyone. We had students from Parkland come and tell us that they were there for us, who wore green for us. We had kids all over the nation, teachers, people all around the community. We had elementary schoolers who wrote us the sweetest, cutest little notes that literally made me like bawl my eyes out. And I remember reading one, it was some girl that she posted a picture of. Hers said, "All the love, I hope you have less shootings." And like, it's kind of sick that we have to like tell little kids about this, and this is something that they're gonna maybe think of when they think of Forrest, which I hope isn't what they think of. I hope they think of how strong the students and the teachers are here and how unified we all became, because then, you know, there was some disagreements about stuff, but in the end we all were like, we're strong because we're a community and we're gonna support each other no matter what, because we're all really lucky to have each other.
It was really, really cool. Just like, it was like everywhere you turn there was green, and especially I went to work Friday night, and it was just really awesome because I walked into work and every single one of my coworkers was wearing green, and it was just really cool seeing like the unity you saw like with all the community, the school, like it didn't matter where I turned, like there was somebody wearing green, so it's just really cool and empowering, and just seeing like all that support, it was just awesome.
I thought that was truly amazing. I know a lot of people here talk about like we took it like we were over dramatizing the incident, and it's not what happened. Like sure, only one person got hurt, but it's not what happened, it was the what could have happened or what he planned to happen. Because, I mean, like Crawford said, the Alice protocol, that really saved, I think, a lot of people's lives that day, because if you got into a classroom, you don't know what could have happened or what his intentions were. So, especially on Forest Friday, when you just saw all this maybe not all the school board members, but some of them come, and all the sheriff's office and the fire department and Zaxby's and all the sponsors that are now Forrest sponsors, and that's truly amazing. And just seeing how much support we have, not just in Marion County, but in Florida and nationwide.
It was absolutely amazing to see how far-reaching this was, to look on my Facebook, to look on Twitter, to look on Instagram, and to see infants, elementary school children, teenagers, adults, grandparents, to see all this green, and then the mayor to come to school and present the student body with the official proclamation of it being Forrest Friday. It was just overwhelming. It was incredible to see the amount of people who really wanted to show that they care and to show support. And I hope that this, as a faculty member, I definitely felt that, and I've had a number of students say that they were impressed by it as well. So I hope the students can understand the amount of support that there is in the community.
I'm sure, like every single person in the school, though, our lives have been changed forever by that event. I saw a student come out of the boys' bathroom the other day, and I couldn't see his hands. They were all tucked in the front of his shirt. And, for a second I went, oh, shooter, and I think he was just wiping his hands on his shirt because he didn't stand there and use the blower. But we're different. We're all different people. I'm fine, and I thank God that we're all okay, but I know I'm still not sleeping well, and we will be okay eventually, but we are forever changed. We are forever changed.
This is just proof that Ocala is a great place to live, and a great place to raise your family, and a great place to have a job. We had support not just from our schools surrounding us, our quote-unquote rival schools, but we had support throughout the entire state and throughout the entire nation. I cannot tell you how many people called to offer their support. I think it was a really healing process for our kids. It let them, we had the assembly on Wednesday, which allowed them to have kind of some closure and to give thanks, and then Friday just so they could see that the entire community really supports them. And I think there's been a shift. I've seen it in the hallways, I've seen it amongst the student body. People just are checking on each other more. Kids are smiling more. Kids are talking to other students that they've never spoken to. And I really, really hope that people understand that, hashtag ForrestStrong is not any longer about what happened to us on April 20th. It is instead about a community that came together.
I feel like there's a lot of guilt sometimes, because we look at like a lot of other school shootings, and they had a lot of kids, they lost a lot of kids, kids died. And while we're so fortunate and so blessed to all have survived this, like from the help of Miss Panasek and Officer Long and just amazing law enforcement and people that have supported us, I think there's a lot of guilt, survivor's guilt. And recovering has been weird because we're survivors of a school shooting, but it doesn't really feel that way sometimes. But and some people might be like, well, nobody died and stuff, and that's why we're not getting media coverage, oh, nobody died. But the fear we felt in this room, we thought people died. We thought there was somebody walking around the school with a gun who wanted to kill us. That fear was real. But I think it's good that we don't forget those kind of things, because emotion and pain is what changes things, and we don't want our kids to feel scared when they go to school, so we're gonna do something about it. And it doesn't mean that it's gonna be about guns, or it's not gonna be about guns. It just means that there's gonna have to be something that changes, so our kids don't have to do this, because we're the generation, I have a lot of faith in us that we're gonna be able to change that, so our kids don't have to go through that.
Probably just that it's cool seeing how our school's choosing not to live in fear over this, and we're choosing to grow stronger and grow in our relationships with each other, and not let it be something that tears our school apart, but it's something that's building it up to something greater than it was before.
It is still hard for me to wrap this little brain around the idea that we are now one of those statistics. It's 2.5 weeks ago, right? On Friday, it'll be 3 weeks. It still seems almost distant. I think if we were in psychology, we would say we have disassociated from it. We've separated ourselves from that. And I feel that way about it. I can't believe, like, if you were to Google schools where there has been an active shooter this year, we would be listed as part of that. As I said before, we are forever changed by that. But I also think there is, you know, the motto that they're using, you know, that ForrestStrong and we are one, and it is something that brings us together. I do feel, you know, for the seniors, I want them to end on a really positive note. I don't want this to be the way they remember the end of their senior year, yet certainly it will have a great impact on them.
I am incredibly proud to work at Forrest High School. Our students showed that they are the best in the world. They were calm. They did exactly what we asked. They listened. They were supporting one another. Our administration did exactly what they were supposed to. The first responders were amazing. The district came down and supported us. Everything happened textbook. It could not have went in the middle of something horrible. People showed grace and dignity under that, and I think it's something that should be honored and respected. And really, I want people to remember that this should be remembered. A lot of times people try to remember things because, you know, so many kids died. Instead, I want people to remember that, look at how wonderful it happened because everyone did what they were supposed to. And when you really come together, it really helps to avert, which could have been just a dynamic tragedy. You know, when you look at these teachers and the sacrifices that they made instantly to ensure their students' safety, it really shows that Forrest High School cares about their students, we care about each other, and we care about our community.